Hello and welcome to our viewers on ASI News broadcast, bringing you the latest top news for today. NATO touts increased forces amid ongoing Ukraine talks. As heads of state gathered this week to discuss the ongoing conflict between Ukraine and Russia, signs of increased military posturing emerged from Washington and Europe, as the White House considered arming Ukrainian troops against separatist rebels, and NATO signaled that it would beef up its presence on the border to aid Ukraine. U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry traveled to Ukraine this week to join German Chancellor Angela Merkel and French President François Hollande, who are planning to introduce an initiative that they say would end the fighting and would be based upon the full territorial integrity of Ukraine, according to Hollande. Merkel and Hollande are set to travel to Russia next week to present the plan to Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking from a news conference in Kiev, Kerry called on Russia to agree to a ceasefire, pull back troops and weapons from Ukraine, and close their neighboring borders. The Russian government has repeatedly denied that it has been sending military personnel and equipment into Ukraine. Putin spokesman Dmitry Peskov told CNN that Kerry's speech just shows the unwillingness and inability of the United States to participate in settlement of the Ukrainian crisis. Despite Kerry's proclaimed support for an end to the conflict, the U.S. sent several recent signals that it would be willing to arm Ukraine to help its forces fend off separatists and, according to the New York Times, build pressure on Moscow to seek a political settlement. Barack Obama's nominee for Defense Secretary Ashton Carter told the Senate on Thursday that he would, quote, very much incline toward sending missiles, battlefield radars, drones, and other weapons to Ukraine. Similarly, NATO Representative Adam Thompson told the Associated Press on Wednesday that the alliance may continue, quote, strengthening its military posture in response in particular to the challenge that Russia's behavior represents, end quote. NATO ministers also recently completed plans to increase its presence throughout Eastern Europe, opening command centers in Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania, a notable change for the alliance. Moscow has previously called NATO the top military threat against the beleaguered nation, whose economy is rapidly deteriorating under strict Western sanctions and the global drop in oil prices. On Thursday, the government said it would consider any U.S. arms sent to Ukraine to be a military threat. Over a decade later, survivors of torture at Abu Ghraib demanding measure of justice. More than a decade later, Iraqi survivors of torture at the U.S.-run Abu Ghraib prison are still fighting for, quote, a measure of justice in U.S. civil courts. The four plaintiffs, all of whom were held captive at the prison, then released without charges, argued in a federal district court in Virginia on Friday that private mercenary company CACI, Premier Technology Incorporation, which was operating in the prison, should have to stand trial for its confirmed role in their torture. The hearing was the latest development in a suit backed by the Center for Constitutional Rights, which was first filed in 2008. The contractor has argued vigorously that it should not face any liability, despite the fact that military investigators found that in 2004, CACI directly colluded with U.S. soldiers in torture. So far, CACI's effort to dodge culpability have been successful. In 2013, a federal judge dismissed the former Abu Ghraib prisoners' lawsuit against CACI on the grounds that because Abu Ghraib is overseas, it is beyond the jurisdiction of U.S. courts. That ruling, however, was later overturned by the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals, thereby allowing the lawsuit to proceed. Now CACI argues that the question of whether it can be held accountable is, quote, a political question. The New York Times describes this legal argument as a murky concept nearly as old as the Supreme Court itself, holds that courts are not authorized or equipped to resolve certain matters like some military decisions or aspects of foreign relations, and must leave them to the other branches of government, end quote. Lawyers say that what the company is really after is impunity for torture. They write that CACI had, quote, no problem taking taxpayers' money, but when it comes to taking responsibility for their role at the prison, they try to hide behind a web of convoluted arguments that would render them legally untouchable, end quote. The piece continues, sheltering CACI from the federal courts as well means they can operate with impunity. Despite the global outcry over the atrocities committed in the Abu Ghraib prison, which was reportedly shut down last year by the Iraqi government, the only people who have so far been held accountable for torture at the prison are low-ranking U.S. soldiers. Those were the latest news brought to you from the American Studies Institute from Tehran. You can also check our website at www.asipress.us. Thanks for watching.